Good afternoon on this last week of Poetry Month, otherwise known as April, which many of us have been celebrating by writing and posting haiku on the connector. If you haven't had a chance to read Trish Perry or Joan Didion or Christy Jones, Meg wrote one, Joyce wrote some. They're just great and lovely, and we're so happy to see that everyone took advantage of this opportunity to play with us in words. Today we're going to put some poetry into the sunny spring air, at least sunny in Massachusetts. We're lucky to have two wonderful poets, Sally Bliumis-Dunn and Pamela Hart, with us to help shift our lenses from our more prosaic ones that we tend to use regularly to look at the landscape of aging and the culture of aging and confronting issues of aging. Sally and Pam are going to read a few poems each from their new books, and then we'll have a bit of Q&A, and then if there's time, Q&A from everyone here as well. So I'll afterwards ask them some questions for them to have a conversation among themselves for a little bit, and then we'll have everyone join in as well. I've had the pleasure of knowing both Pam and Sally since our days as late blooming graduate students at Sarah Lawrence College when we were in the MFA program there 16 or 17 years ago. I was much older than they were at the time, I should say. So first, let me introduce Pam Hart. She's the author of an award-winning debut collection called Mothers of Over Nangarhar. It's an exquisitely engaging exploration into both her experience of having a son graduate from college and enlist in the U.S. Army, and the experiences of families with soldiers in Afghanistan and Iraq. The poems in the book give us the voices, perspectives, and inner realities of parents toward sorry, I lost my place there a little, toward their sons and daughters in war in Afghanistan, perspectives you don't usually get on the news or TV or in the movies. And reading the poems causes you to feel a mutely terrified state of suspended animation, somewhere between the dunes, the bombs, as she says in one poem, or wanting to be living in the blues of Monet's lilies rather than the knowledge that a son is downrange. The book is also a testament to Pam's dedication as an artist to learning about war and having the courage to spend time with families and gather their stories and persevering in her own artistic mission over more than a decade. The book was published this spring by Sarabande Books. Pam is also writer-in-residence at the Katonah Museum of Art, where she manages and teaches an arts in education program. She received the Brian Turner Literary Arts Prize in Poetry in 2016. She was awarded a National Endowment of Arts Poetry Fellowship, as well as a fellowship at SUNY Purchase College Writers Center. She is a poetry editor, the poetry editor of the Afghan Women's Writing Project, and as you were, the Military Review. Pam formerly worked as a newspaper reporter. She's married, the mother of 3 grown children, 2 sons and a daughter. She's a runner. She takes and posts poetic photographs and enjoys traveling with her husband last year to Mongolia and the Gobi Desert. So with that, I hope you'll join me in Pam.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Wow, that's my whole life in a nutshell. No, but thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me and Sally here. So I'm just going to read a few poems from my book. As Bruce kind of gave you the context of it, after my son went off on this path, I started sort of reading and studying war stories. And as I was doing this, of course, most of them focused on the experience of soldiers on and off the battlefield, as well as on the home front. And that's obviously compelling, but I could not find stories that connected with, that spoke to my experience. Can you hear me, first of all?
Hear you.
Yes.
Okay, good. So, so the book is the poems in the book are sort of an attempt to fill a little bit of that gap. So let me start with the first one. This is called Stray Dog Story. She's a get-it-done kind of person, says Rosie, a hold down the fort woman. She's the good wife, gets dinner on the table, listens when he calls, a go-to gal, his since middle school when she wore glasses and he was a punk. It's snowing as Rosie tells her story. I'm listening with a winter mind and looking at the flakes assembling on branches in formation, lining up like good children, her 3 small, my 3 grown. When he's in Afghanistan, she sticks to her guns, keeps the household humming. It's lonely for him stuck in some forward operating base. They Skyped and she got depressed. Getting it done got hard and lonely. I get that, I say, as one flake sticks to the pane like some flash in the pan bit of beauty. He finds a dog, Rosie explains, and he's in for the whole 9 yards. He loves the mutt, sleeps with it, gives that pup his all and all, while Rosie's driving to doctor this and overdue bills that. There are responsibilities, and she knows she can't go off half-cocked. The dog gets in heat, gets to be a pain, fools around with bomb dogs. What comes next is nothing she could fix. She's not that kind of fixer-upper. The big guns shoot the dog there and then. When he Skypes, he cries. Words are empty, Rosie explains. The snow charges hard. She says, words aren't enough, are they ever, I ask. This is called, this poem is Night Vision, sort of night vision goggles, which aren't in this poem, but they are something that soldiers wear to help them see. You've probably seen them on lots of movies, but anyway, so night vision. There's not much evidence the war of 1812 was fought nearby as beer and music pulse Fridays at the Anchor. The men all close cut and right postured loudly in your face. Young women with their jeans pressed tight, hair skinny and long, like the night bearing down. No sign in the mirror of shot glasses clattering in clutches along tall tables where Uncle John's band clashes with Katy Perry's roar. It's the end of the drinking season, the war bar filled with tourists and soldiers, tales spilling from tattoos and vodka, what they know almost lost in the hazy crush of sweat and sound. Night circles possibility and regret. You listen to the army wife talking about her brother dead of cystic fibrosis, the lieutenant who can't sleep. Pearl, who owns the place, loves these guys, gives you a free round, says her cancer is good for now. You know how it goes. Imagination will be your enemy and lover. The war children will dance, their words beating across the great river that continues outside, night falling into your mouth, all of it.
Great poem.
One last poem. And I should just say that, I should have said this earlier, Nangarhar is a province in eastern Afghanistan. It's on the border of Pakistan. A lot of activity has happened there, and it was the place that Osama bin Laden was hiding out in at one point. So anyway, this is my last poem. It's called Praise Song. A morning prayer to all that keeps you safe, to body armor and weapons, the drill sergeant and the bullet, interpreter and phrase book, to MREs and rocket launchers, also the forward operating base and your radio operator, the helicopter pilots and soldiers who donate blood, the medic and tourniquet, dog tags and helmet. I sing of your boots caked in clay, rough with hours, of the IED you don't step on, and the dog who finds it. The specialist and sniper, tip of the spear and rear guard. I want to praise the desert, the women of Afghanistan, Tajik, Pashtun, Hazara. May they be wild with fury. To your smile and your instinct, a praise song to next month and the next, each one bringing you home alive. So
beautiful work.
A little sampling of the book, and thank you for listening.
Beautiful work, really. So it's now my pleasure I'm delighted to introduce Sally Bliumis-Dunn, who is a soul-quenching poet and reader, as I said, who I've also known since our days at Sarah Lawrence, where we studied with the likes of Tom Lux and Vijay Seshadri. Her most recent book is called Echolocation, which was published in March 2018. The book is the result of 8 years of effort, and it lives on several levels. It brings the reader to the closely observed world of nature, particularly the tidal and marine worlds of Maine and the Galapagos, as well as to the real and metaphoric worlds in which whales and poets locate themselves by bouncing sounds off things like floors of oceans and floors of being. The poems of Echolocation expose us to the intimate and often tense and poignant relationship between the poet and her mother, as the poet retraces a life of what couldn't be said, and a beautiful, sometimes painful, sometimes joyful, always tender witnessing of her mother's decline to death. Along the way, she encounters and locates herself as she ages as a woman too. Sally teaches modern poetry at Manhattanville College and the Palm Beach Poetry Festival. Her poems appeared in the Paris Review, Prairie, Schooner, Plume, Poetry London, New York Times, PBS NewsHour, and on American Life and Poetry, a blog by poet laureate Ted Kooser. In 2002, she was a finalist for the Nimrod, Hardman, Pablo Neruda Prize. Her previous books, Talking Underwater and Second Skin, which contains one of my favorite of Sally's poems, Crossword, were published by Wind Publications in 2007 and 2010. Galapagos Poems was published by Kattywompus Press. She lives in Armonk, New York, with her husband John, and she has they have a total of 4 children, a son and 3 daughters. So welcome, Sally, and we're so happy to have you with us.
Oh, thank you, Bruce. I feel so honored to read with Pam, whose work I so admire. Also, I just turned 60, and that seemed big to me. And I've been thinking a lot about how to frame aging in a positive way. So I'm very curious to hear the discussion after this. And I'm happy to share a few poems from my book, Echolocation. I'll read you the title poem. Bruce kind of explained the title, because I do think poets try to locate themselves through bouncing sound off their inner selves and off, hopefully, their readers. The book's dedicated to my mom, and Ted Kooser allowed me to use an epigraph of his from a poem called Mother, so I'll read it to you. If it weren't for the way you taught me to look at the world, to see the life at play in everything, I would have to be lonely forever. So that's for my mom. She died actually almost 2 years ago to the day. And here's the title poem, Echolocation. Echolocation. The whales can't hear each other calling in the noise-cluttered sea. They beach themselves. I saw one once heaved onto the sand with kelp stuck to its blue-gray skin. Heavy and immobile, it lay like a great sadness, and it was hard to breathe with all the stink. Its elliptical black eyes had stilled, were mostly dry, and barnacles clustered on its back like tiny brown volcanoes. Imagining the other whales, their roving weight, their blue-black webbing of the deep, I stopped knowing how to measure my own grief. And this one, large and dead on the sand, with its unimaginable 500-pound heart. Can you guys hear me?
We hear you good.
Yes, we can.
Okay, and there's some funny sound in the background. Are you hearing that?
Yeah, I did hear a little of that.
Yeah, I did too.
I was just wondering.
Don't know.
Okay.
It's not just in you.
It doesn't matter.
It's the whale.
Okay, so the largest narrative arc in the book is my mom had very severe dementia, and I lived nearby and visited her very often. So this chronicles one of the visits, and then, as Bruce mentioned, she passes away at the end of it. But there are lots of other themes contained in the book as well. But that's the largest narrative arc. But this one is from one of those visits, and it's called Mother. Mother. Little stirrings in the dried fallen leaves along the path. It's when I speak to my old mother and her eyes widen for a moment, then close. She sits in her chair, tweed jacket, well coiffed, looking as she did in her day, though now someone else must dress her, lift the blouse from the hanger, help her slip it on the way she once did for me, grab the cuff, she'd say. The soft tunnel of sleeve would hold me. Sometimes we sing. She only vaguely mouths the words, though occasionally she'll drift along on a note like a leaf lifted by wind before it stills. If I sit by her on the couch, she'll put her head near mine, my hand in hers. Her body is how she remembers now, the way the growth of a tree, the twists of its branches recall the rain, the snow, the sun.
Beautiful.
Let's see. I will read all of these poems that I chose. I don't know if we'll talk about it later, but they're all poems that I certainly wouldn't have written as a younger woman. This is called Beats. Does anyone read the Farmer's Almanac? It's a funny little thing. You know, they have their funny little sayings, and it said, watch for the shoulders of the beets to protrude above the soil. And I thought, shoulders of the beets. Fun. So this is called Beets. Yes to the shoulders of the beets, an upward tug on red-veined leaves, as if might follow miniature torsos, legs, and feet. Today I rescue them as men I have loved, because for a moment, in this guise, they can all be good. Okay, and I'll just read one more poem. I feel like my mom was really lucky, and we were really lucky that during her last days, there were 4 siblings, and we were all around her when she died. So this is from those days. It's called A Cutting. A Cutting. Back when I was 7, you offered me a cutting. I could not imagine white nubs appearing, then growing into roots that float as an old crone's hair might float in the bath. Scraggly, tangled, not like your auburn bangs, the only part of you unchanged, talisman of the mother we knew. Oilier, softer from our hands as we stroked your forehead in your last days. I could not imagine. We gathered by your bed, and your hair felt like the fine spun silk of your evening jacket. Swans and little boatmen swirling in the blue. I could not imagine back when I was 7 and you cut the fattest stem from your favorite plant with its big magenta heart centering each leaf, and you placed it in a glass of water telling me it will grow. So thanks for listening.
That's great, Sally. Beautiful, both of you. You're both such good readers to boot.
I love hearing them. I love hearing them come from you.
Oh.
Yeah. You know, the only thing I would say is, as much as I love Zoom, nothing beats sitting in reality in front of you reading and hearing your, you know, I often don't feel the absence of on a daily basis, but in poetry, I almost feel like we're still not being in the presence of the human, in the absolute presence of the human voice. We're just a little bit short, but
It's
You
true.
want to be in Sloanham, right?
what's that?
You want to be in Sloanham at Sarah Lawrence.
Yeah, exactly. That's precisely right. And I'd go back there in a heartbeat.
Yeah, that was
Um,
our reading room. So.
so I just throw out a few questions, and then after I'll save about 15 minutes for us to open it up. So we'll see where we get to. The first question I have is, well, neither of you is precisely a poet writing about aging. Each of you reflect your poems, in your poems, perspectives that tell us about the experience of living and aging. Sally's poems about her mother's decline and changes of her adult woman's body give us perspective that many of us understands. Pam's are different, about the costs of war and the seen and the unseen, both of you, the spoken and the unspoken. So I wondered, you know, maybe Sally first and then Pam, if you could speak to how your personal histories and your perspective has altered with age. Perhaps, you know, as Sally said, these poems that you wrote, Sally, couldn't have been written by a younger woman. Maybe you could expand a little on that too.
Sure. I have precisely written about an aging woman's body. I found going through menopause to be a great loss, and writing about it helped me get through it and sort of get to the other side and see the positive aspects of that. But it was a struggle, and writing really helped with that struggle. Echolocation, the title poem, I think when one is young, or when I was young, my sadness felt much larger. Now it feels like it's a tiny, I'm another human who has her sadnesses and has her joys, and it's tiny compared to, say, a whale being beached or something. I feel like I've gained a certain perspective with age, that the world is very big and I'm very, very small. And I love that. I love feeling that myself is almost something minute that feels very relieving to me in a great way. And like the poem Beats is, I can look back at men I've loved and find something
redeeming.
Find something redeeming. Yes, there's a certain distance with aging that makes it all kind of funny and human and comprehensible in a way that's real in my heart, in a way perhaps it wouldn't have been as a younger woman. Yeah, and chronicling my mother's decline brought me very close to the sad part of aging, because we really did lose who she was. She was a very vibrant woman, and little glimmers of that in that poem, Little Stirrings, but you know, very, very close looking and writing about that. I can't say it made me accept losing her, because it didn't, but it made it more bearable because the poems could be shared with other people. That's what poetry does, allows you to share. That's great.
Yeah, Pam, would you want to take a crack at that?
Yeah, well, no, I really love what Sally says about the idea of scale. For me, the scale of time is something that I've certainly think about. I think about it more now than I know I did, say, 20 years ago. I think when you're young, of course, the world is a wide, huge place, and everything feels possible. And as we move through the years, that the loss of that that wide openness, of course, you know, there's obviously trade-offs, the knowledge, et cetera, of experience. But this idea of scale has, I think, it informs my writing, the scale of time, in that I feel this real push to look carefully and closely, as if it's kind of a joke I tell myself, as if looking can make a difference, can slow things down, can have an impact on the loss that one feels with the passage of time, with the change in one's body, in one's relationship with, children and work and friends. So, that sort of joke, that thing that I say to myself, that if I look carefully and closely, and with attention, that it'll make a difference. But I certainly think that that's one thing that's probably changed in the course of my perceptions in general, both in my writing and in the way that I move through the world. So yeah, I love that idea of being able to think about things in a different scale because of the passage of these years.
Great. In terms of that perspective, and obviously perspective is important to our experience of how we age and function, and I know that each of you addresses pain in your poems, but neither of you are poets of pain per se. You're really poets of praise. And in fact, when you were reading, Pam, I was really, the use of the word praise was called to my attention more than it had been even than when I was reading the poem. It really struck me in contrast to the experience of that moment. So maybe you could first address the idea of praise or pain in poetry, and then we'll shift.
Well, I guess I believe that even a prayer to pain is a kind of a praise, a kind of a prayer to joy and beauty. I mean, it seems to me that you can't have one without the other, sort of, in life, and not to sound Pollyanna-ish about all of it, but I think looking closely at joy and also looking closely at pain informs both of them. It gives a conversation between those various emotions. I guess I feel like we live on this, for myself, on a constant continuum of change, as opposed to maybe having this duality of pain and joy. Maybe it's just this wave of change that is constantly moving. So for me, poetry is about just being able to pay attention and think about that from as many different degrees as possible. So yeah, I don't know. I couldn't say for myself whether I'm a poet of pain or joy. I mean, I certainly feel in Sally's beautiful lyrics just the intensity of observation and emotion and description. So I don't know what you think, Sally, but
yeah,
in terms of those two.
I like what you're saying, that it's on a continuum. I think the poems that are most interesting are poems that pull on both ends of that, pull on pain and pull on pleasure and praise, because those are the extremes, and then you sort of contain the whole world in the poem. Octavio Paz was writing about this, something, I'm gonna misquote it, but something about how pain requires transformation in order to make it bearable, but pleasure doesn't. And so I think that I started out personally as a poet who did look a lot at the painful aspects of life, because I needed to move through them in some way to become more of a poet of praise. So I would say that in the Sally continuum, I have become more of a poet of praise, but because I had to work through the pain. But I think the best poems, the ones that I like and what I admire, I'm thinking of that poem that Bruce was mentioning of yours, Pam. I think it was called Praise Song, if I'm remembering right. And you have the boots caked with mud that don't step on the IUD. You have the part, those two images kind of come up against each other as horror and safety. And I think when opposites pull at each other, and praise and pain do pull at each other, it makes for very strong tension in a poem. And I would like to become more of a poet of praise. I think it's harder to write about pleasure than it is about pain. I think it's harder to kind of wrap words around sometimes without sounding Pollyannish.
Mm, yeah.
Great. That, both of your answers are great, actually. So maybe just a couple more questions, and then we'll open up. One that I've been thinking about is, so we were at Sarah Lawrence 16 years ago, and we started working on our MFAs pretty late for poets. I certainly later than you guys, but so there was a bit of an act of courage in doing that. But many of the people on this call are life coaches or help people in transition, and I thought maybe it would be useful for each of you to speak about what it's like becoming a full-time artist in later life, of making that leap of this project that each of you have shown incredible endurance in. Without poetry, it's not like anyone's throwing money at you to write your poems. So it is an act of will to write poetry and sustain it. So maybe you want to go first, Sally, and then Pam on that.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think how best to answer it. I've been writing poetry my whole life, sort of beginning when I was 10. My dad died and it left a big emotional hole in the house. And so poetry had been around for a while. And after my divorce was when I went to Sarah Lawrence, because I needed a community. I'd been writing sort of in isolation with a few friends. I really needed a community of people who were trying each to do something and helping each other, which I think we all found Sarah Lawrence was an incredibly nurturing place. While the standards were high, we all, were very happy for each other's successes and the like. I really needed that kind of community. It could have been that I could have chosen something else, but it was this, and it was wonderful just to be around other people who were so excited by this new thing that I was deciding to fully dedicate myself to. I was teaching at the same time though, because I've never been able to just do the poetry, both for financial reasons, but also just because I was never sure that the poetry was enough to be putting out into the world, like if it would ever reach anybody. But I know my teaching in the classroom, or I felt it, you can feel those interactions with, college students or adults or whomever. So I've never just done the poetry, but it's a wonderful chapter, Sarah Lawrence, and it's given me some of my best friends in poetry.
Yeah, I have to underline Sally's what Sally says about community and finding, a group of like-minded people, not like-minded, but people dedicated to the same activity. And I think that's so true in everything that you kind of move through or take on. If you can find other people to share or support you or give you strategies and condolences, I feel like that's a really big part of it. So for me, that part of the Sarah Lawrence experience was wonderful. I remember before I started, I had this amazing dream about leaping. There was a huge waterfall, Niagara Falls waterfall. And in my dream, I was leaping through and into the waterfall and just going down, down. It wasn't a scary thing. It was an intense thing. It felt, of course, dangerous and risky, but there wasn't a sense of oh shit, what's happening at the bottom? It was just this amazing experience. And I guess I feel like that is something I want to carry with me for as long as I can, in however many years, whether it's, one day or, 20 years, I have no idea, but that idea of sort of leaping into things as best I can, is just this I don't know, it's a kind of a thing. Again, I guess maybe it comes back to time and always feeling, I don't know if you have always felt it, Sally, but the sort of the presence of time in one form or another, whether it's not paying attention to it or having it be something constantly, you know, over my shoulder. But I guess that idea of, so Sarah Lawrence, I'm starting to ramble, was that, you know, that opportunity for me to leap into something. And then once I did it, I said, well, you know, you've got to do it. Like, if you're going to do this, you're going to keep it for real, like not just do it and say goodbye. So that's been the next step. I'm sure, Sally, for you, it's like, how do you keep making this a real thing? And school, yeah. So
I love that. I just will just echo and say, I love the idea. And I think that's one of the positive aspects of getting older is you have to keep yourself leaping. You have to keep making things new in whatever and however that, whatever that means to you. And I love that. I'm gonna remember that. Anytime to try something new.
I like that as well. And you know, one thing that you said will resonate with most of the people on the call who are members of Life Planning Network, which is, I think, we are also a community of people who share a set of values and a kind of a desire to do something for the good of others, but also are experiencing and thinking about and trying to come to grips with aging in our own lives. So I think, you know, in many ways, I hadn't thought about it till you were mentioning community, that there's a reality for me that the experience of the Life Planning Network holds some of that same quality of shared experience with people who are smart and caring and like that. So in a way, the big project of poetry is a lot like the big project of life planning, I think. It's making meaning of our lives. So maybe that you could speak a little to the intentionality with which you try to make meaning of your lives.
Go for it, Sally.
Oh, that's a small question.
Yeah.
I loved what Pam said earlier on about paying close attention. I look at writing and poetry as, and I don't mean this to sound, well, as a form of prayer. It's a form of meditation for me. And, you know, it's just an excuse to, you know, really look closely at this beautiful, painful sometimes, but look closely at the world that we're living in. And I liked what you said also, Pam, about slowing things down. About slowing things down. What exactly was the question? Sorry, it's a sign of age.
No, just the making meaning out of life. That was the project for life planning in some ways. It's also the question for the poet.
Right. So making meaning, and to me, what is beautiful about poetry is, you know, I'm sitting here in an ugly room with, you know, a table, but I could be writing a poem about it. You can make meaning out of anything with poetry because it's really just a springboard. Anything can be a springboard. And I love poetry for that reason, because, you know, you're never stuck in a traffic jam when you can't be either thinking a poem that you've memorized or thinking, you know, it's always fertile ground. It's always meaningful and always new to me in that way. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Pam?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The idea of taking the everyday and, you know, turning it into something, whether it's just the moments of observation and you're jotting down some notes or mental notes, or stuck in traffic and you speak a poem or sing a song. The idea of how to make sense of what we're doing every day, even the little things, like even just washing the dishes and, you know, folding laundry. Of course, we can make meaning out of big things like war. You know, that seems like something that has been meaning made out of it. But sometimes it's the smaller, more mundane or everyday, ordinary things. That's why I love that collection of Neruda's odes, where he, you know, writes poems to his dogs. Yeah, to the tomato, to the onion, to the lemon. So all these everyday kind of things, as opposed to just celebrating, the big things. So for me, yeah, poetry and writing have been about that. But I believe that you can do it, if you take a photograph with your cell phone, that's a kind of attentiveness that could be meaning making, depending on how you kind of use that. So I always think in my teaching, what skills can I give to the young people that I meet who aren't going to become poets? Like, it's not that I'm teaching them to be poets. It's really that I'm teaching them, I hope, to, pay attention, to ask questions, to think about in a sort of metacognitive way about what they're looking at and how they're feeling and what their memories are, just to step back a bit from their lives. And if that's as far as the meaning gets, if it doesn't get to be a poem, at least this notion of sort of awareness, I think, is important. So
fantastic. I'm going to open it up. So anyone who wants to shout out a question, unmute yourselves and shout a question out, or raise your hand and I'll unmute you if you're not. You want to raise a hand? And Meg, go ahead, you're unmuted.
First of all, thank you too. This has been so wonderful. And I would love to hear you in about 10 years. Probably won't be around, but I do sense that there is definitely changing perspective as one ages, and that it can't help but show up in poetry. But the question I could.
And Meg's grandfather was a poet.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
He was, and my sister sort of. Anyway, the question I really am interested in is whether either of you is teaching elders, because I am very concerned with finding meaning and aliveness as we, as mortality becomes more and more in our face. And it can be a very discouraging time. So I just wonder because I think poetry could be a great source for elders, for exploring their lives and for feeling useful and for leaving a legacy. Mm-hmm. So I just wondered whether you've done it or whether you might think about it.
Kim, you want to go first? Or
Sally, aren't you working?
I am, yes.
Yeah.
Did you want to go first?
No, go ahead. No, you go.
Okay. Yes, I teach at the 92nd Street Y. Where do you live, Meg?
Oh, I live near Boston, but I know about the 92nd Street Y.
And I teach in their senior center.
Great.
And it's not a class I adore this class. They're my favorites, actually. I have one guy who's 96 years old, who's sharp as a tack. All my peeps are, I would say, 85 and above. And even though it's a personal essay class and not a poetry class, I often bring in poems as prompts and let people either write an essay or if they want to write a poem in response. What I was talking to them, I was actually in there yesterday, and I said I'm part of this webinar, and some people are leaving a legacy for their family. Some people just want to tell their stories and be heard. There are people in there for all different kinds of reasons. Some people are in there because they want to hear other people's stories, or they want to sort of be budding. I try and teach them to be, I don't want to say critical because that sounds negative, but they're learning how to be editors in some way for each other, which builds a closeness if it's done well and in a safe environment and with people's best interests at heart. So I feel like it's a huge privilege to be in there, and I've been there for many years. I hope I get to stay.
Yeah, I think I am not currently working with elders. My students are all elementary school students. I'm actually hoping to develop a program that moves into the prison system, so that is sort of a pull right now. But I mean, I have had workshops where there have been, you know, a range of people. I actually kind of like that idea as well. But I mean, I think the sort of call to tell your story, you know, definitely increases, it seems to me, with age.
Yes.
I remember both my mother died quite young, but my father and father-in-law, as they aged and got, you know, less healthy, the drive for them to tell. I mean, it felt like this huge imperative to get us to, you know, gather the details. And of course, I always kick myself for not having made a video or recording, because those stories are now lost. So yeah, I think it's an archive for us, you know, a way of collecting, you know, not just family stories, but I think also cultural and you know, even sociological and political stories. We need those. So
Thank you.
yeah. So go out and tell.
Yeah, I mean, these people at the Hyman Brown Center at this 92nd Street Y, they're almost like each other's family. They come, they take classes, they play mahjong together. You know, there's a nursery school that's also housed in the building. There are New York's greatest cultural events in the building. It's a very vibrant place.
It's a great place. The 92nd Street Y is a treasure. Yeah, yeah.
The treasure.
Would anyone else like to pose a question? So.
I don't have a question. I'm not on mute?
You're not on mute either.
No, just a process. I mean, I have found this totally inspiring. I mean, I think your work is very profound and moving. And for me, it's interesting in terms of working with elders, because I'm thinking myself as an aging woman and an adult, that there's a place for poetry in my life, which I hadn't really known. That I've always been involved in art and other kinds of ways of expression. And in fact, it was through writing that haiku for this thing. It was interesting because I paint, and then I said, oh, a haiku, maybe I can write a haiku. And I just looked at the painting and what was drawing me there, and I could put it in words, and it was a real joy. And so it brought back to me the thinking of Jean Cohn, that creativity is chocolate for the aging brain. And if adults who aren't poets can find the poetry in their own life and the words that they have to express meaning and connection in everyday life, it's a wonderful gift. And so I just think there's so much potential for this. And then the whole legacy piece, which is another thing, the storytelling, but just that kind of observing the moment in life, putting it into words and what makes meaning for you in a spiritual, connecting way is a real gift. And it's like breathing. Anyone can do it, but people think, oh, I can't write a poem. You know?
Yeah.
It's really possible. So, okay.
Yeah.
Sally, did you want to respond?
I think that's wonderful. And you know, there are poems that are written in response to paintings called ekphrastic poems. It's a real thing. There are a lot of poets who do that. But yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to write more and even to branch out from the haiku, you know. I think what's happened now is because a lot of people aren't using rhyme and people are, Billy Collins, do you know who he is?
No.
He's a guy who can start a poem anywhere. He can say, you know, I'm sitting at the dining room table, and then, you know, kind of the poem will widen and widen and you'll be out in the universe. But he made it very possible to do what Pam and I were talking about, which is you write about the everyday things, and that's okay, because those are the nuts and bolts of life. And so it's not this high that you must be writing about these grand philosophical issues. You can be writing about your life and have that be very meaningful, and that's very accepted and enjoyed, and it holds a lot of balance, it holds a lot of meaning to do that. So I would encourage you to keep going, and that's a wonderful thing.
I could certainly imagine you, especially if the haiku feels like a comfortable place, like to just keep stringing them together almost, you know, like they could keep speaking to each other, or, you know, you could stretch them out so that there's one haiku followed by another, or independent ones. I know sometimes people start with the form because it gives them, you know, sort of a scaffolding or something to grab hold on. I have a person I've worked with, and she's very attached right now, and she's, you know, an older person starting to write poetry, to acrostics, which sometimes feel like something that kids would do, but she actually loves it, and I just tell her to keep going, and at a certain point she'll let go of that, and she'll just sort of move into the place of, oh, it's just language and words and, you know, poetry, without the necessarily the form being the thing. So but for a painter, haiku makes a lot of sense because they are a very painterly kind of poem.
Imagistic.
Yeah.
Let me unmute you, Ella. Hold on. There you go. Go ahead, Ella.
Okay, there we go. I just have a question to both of you. Obviously, you have written in essay form, and I'm curious to hear from both of you what had to shift inside for you to move from that linear kind of essay writing to poetry. What's the core shift for you? How you would describe that? The elders that I work with, I consider myself an elder, and the elders I work with, that there's almost like this little step, and I'm curious to hear you would describe it.
Well, for me, when I work with students in schools who are constantly learning and living in the space of essay writing to prompts, all of it towards testing. So they have to learn how to write, a topic sentence and a 5-paragraph essay and all of that stuff. When they move to, what they do to move to poetry is the idea of kind of breaking and letting go of all the rules that you have to think about when you make other kinds of writing, when you make a sentence, when you make a paragraph. They love the idea of not having to have punctuation, of not having to have capital letters. We talk about you can use the page, you don't have to go from left to right, that you can actually think in lines and space. And so, and then, if you can get a little more granular, it just depends on time, you can let go of, all of those connecting words like the thes and the a's and the buts and the becauses. So sometimes it's just it's sort of the permission, at least for me, the permission to let go of all of those kind of rules and conventions that typically go along with the type of writing that most of us grow up with. Most of us, that's how we learned in that space. We don't really learn how to write poetry in school, other than, if you do, it's a haiku. You don't really read any kind of poetry, in elementary school, other than perhaps you read something outdated. Nothing wrong with Keats or Shakespeare, but so much amazing stuff happening in poetry right now, so much dynamic work, that it's just, to me, a shame that students aren't completely engrossed in poetry as a way of learning how to write. To me, you're better off starting with poetry and moving towards the essay or the nonfiction narrative or whatever it is that they have to do to take the test. Even the short story or the novel. I think poets who write novels and memoirs, you can just see their craft. So for me, the shift came because I can't deal with plot. So that was my thing. That's what's so great about poetry. I don't have to have a plot. I don't have to think about character. All those things that I'm not good at. So anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know, Sally. What about you?
Yeah. So I was thinking about what you were saying about teaching. And I think for me the biggest difference is when I'm teaching, what I'm hoping I'm teaching kids to do, because most of them won't end up being poets, and most adults, I think it's to trust the path of their imagination, to trust the path of their thinking. Elizabeth Bishop is a poet who let us see her thinking process on the page, and I think it's really hard to mirror your thinking process on the page. But I think if you can, I think each person's mind is so unique and so individual that that's the goal, is to let the person see the mind at work. And I think you see that most in poetry. You don't need a plot. You're following the weird path of your associations and imagination and sort of imagistic leaps and sonic leaps, you know, the sound of the language. And I just think that there's a real freedom in that. And I think when I'm teaching, that's what I'm trying to teach, is trust your imaginations, because they can apply that to computer science. They can apply that to, you know, whatever field they go into, to trust your own sense of creativity. So, and it's not that I don't think essays can be creative, because I think they can be.
Yes.
Beautifully creative. Like if you look at Virginia Woolf's Street Haunting or something like that, that's like one long, you know, narrative poem. But I like the idea of poetry not having to be, as Pam said, well, it can be plotless, it can be nonlinear in terms of time, it's just something else. It's a reflection of the imagination in a way that I think little else in the written, what we have of written arts are, whatever kind of thing there.
So may I say one reflection back?
Please.
Those people that I've been honored by, to be with them as they were on the journey, very close to dying. They were breaking the rules and trusting themselves. And I love what you two just said. Weaving those two things together is such an awesome way to shape one description of what it is to morph oneself into eldership, and then to wisdom, and then to just break in all the fucking rules and trusting ourselves.
Let's break all the
Thank you. I love your work. You made my day.
That should be the title of your book.
breaking all the fucking rules.
Breaking the fucking rules. The aging mind or something like that.
Well, this has really been wonderful. I'm sure everyone here is very grateful to both you, Pam, and Sally, for taking the time to share your poems with us and your minds with us. And, you know, for me, it's like when I went to Sarah Lawrence 17 years ago, it was as if I'd gone down the rabbit hole in
Alice.
Alice, thank you. In Alice, I forgot which hole it was. In Alice in Wonderland. And, you know, this reminds me of it. The beauty of poets and poetry is the opportunity to get away from all the noise that surrounds our lives and enter into a conversation that is real and deep and meaningful. And so I'm grateful to both of you for taking the time to help us get there.
Oh, thank you. I mean, really, it's given me a whole bunch of things to think about when I run now, new things. And it's just been an honor to be with Sally and, you know, to share a reading space, which we haven't done. So I want to do more of it.
Me too, Pam.
Yeah.
I think your whole organization is such a great, has such a great mission. So I'd like to hear more about positive reframing outside the poetry world, you know, towards the whole aging thing, because like I said, I struggle with it some.
Well, you came to the right place.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bruce.
Sorry.
I want to thank Bruce for putting this together.
Absolutely.
And
Yes,
also,
definitely.
of course, Joyce, both of you.
Yes.
Bruce, thank you. This was a gift, and we always get comments about the quality of the speakers who come to our monthly programs. And Pamela and Sarah, it's amazing that you've brought this to a whole other level. And I think if we want to continue we could create a special interest group right on the connector and continue this conversation. Yep. So if folks are interested, let Bruce or I know, and let's make it happen.
All right. Well, fantastic. And I'll post this as soon as I get to edit it, and we'll get it up on the connector. And thank you all for joining us today.
And Bruce, could you send us the link? Would we be able to see that? Okay.
I'll send you a copy of it. And,
okay.
You know, you're welcome to join us too. Go ahead.
Can we write you? Can we email you guys?
Sure.
Us? Sure. Yeah.
Oh, maybe Bruce will send your emails.
I will. Just remind me who wants it, and I'm happy to.
I'm for one happy to, if anyone takes sort of a leap and decides one of Pam's diving leap decides to try some poems and wants to send them along, I'm happy to look and write you back, and I'm all for it. Sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. What a gift. Thank you.
Can I just say to Joan, are you there, Joan?
Joan is there, yeah.
Yeah.
Your book, Bodies Ourselves, was like a life-changing thing for a 13-year-old girl who'd never heard her body spoken about in a way she could really understand something.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful to have been part of it, to be part of that project. Yeah, thank you. I mean, yes.
Life-changing.
Sally, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Hi. Thank you so much. I loved everything I heard. I work with elders as well, and I have clients. And I'm wondering, could I put that offer you just gave to review some poetry out to some clients if they were interested in writing a little bit? Is that something?
Sure. You know, sure. Why not? If it gets to be, honestly, if it gets to be too much, I'll tell you. Sure. Yes, of course. Why not?
Oh, you're so kind. Thank you so much. I'll say to those who I think might be interested.
Sure.
I have some artists, so they might be interested. So
okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you so much, Bruce.